You're listening to The Luxury Item, the podcast on the business of luxury and the people and companies that are shaping the future of the luxury industry. Here's your host, Scott Kerr.
My guest on The Luxury Item is American high-end fashion designer Billy Reid. Headquartered out of Florence, Alabama, Billy Reid has been making expertly crafted standout clothes for more than 20 years. Billy Reid offers menswear, womenswear, footwear, and accessories with an emphasis on domestic manufacturing, proprietary textiles development, and high-quality construction. After his eponymous brand endured several cataclysmic setbacks early on, Billy Reid is now a fully developed, successful global operation with a healthy store network, wholesale distribution, and growing e-commerce business. His southern roots paired with a downtown New York sensibility embody the aesthetic and lifestyle of the brand. Emphasizing craftsmanship, expert tailoring, and the use of unconventional fabrics, Reid's collections reflect a personal authenticity. It's been said that Billy Reid doesn't make clothes that stand out. He makes clothes that stand the test of time. Billy Reid earned some of the most prestigious honors in fashion, including 4 CFDA awards from the Council of Fashion Designers and GQ's Best New Menswear Designer. Welcome to The Luxury Item, Billy.
Hey, thanks for having me, Scott. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you on the show. You know, Billy, you've had quite the journey since your first foray into the world of designer fashion in 1998 with the launch of a men's only line, William Reid, in New York. What were those very early days like, and what was the original formula you had in mind for the William Reid brand at the time?
We started out of our bedroom, basically. And my wife was pregnant with our first child at the time. And we were also remodeling the house that we had bought. So there's a lot of chaos and a lot of changes in life at that point. And that was it. Really it was me, just starting. And then we had hired an assistant to work with me and to get the collection together. The idea behind it really was, I was at a point where I had been doing a lot of freelance work for different people. After being with Reebok for 6 years, I spent about 4 years, doing just different freelance projects, from Fruit of the Loom to PGA Tour. And did some stuff with Neiman Marcus and Takashimaya, Fruit of the Loom underwear project. I mean, really tons of different freelance things. And a friend had suggested, man, you should really try to do your own collection. And I had thought about it, and so let me just kind of try it, see what happens. And went, really the premise was I would always go shopping and could not find things that I liked, whether it was a certain detail or a certain fit or fabric. It's one of those things that's like, man, I should try to make it the way I would like to make it. And so I went to Italy, where I had the samples and sent photos and got accepted to a trade show in New York, which was called The Collective at the time, which was kind of a big menswear trade show. I went there. I had great reaction, but we only opened 2 accounts, which is not a lot. We were able to kind of figure it out, and we just went ahead and made the minimum kind of production runs and took those 2 accounts, which were they were good accounts. They were Fred Siegel in Los Angeles and Stanley Korshak in Dallas. And we were fortunate enough to, they partnered with us. We got the product in there. We did a couple of trunk shows, and it went really well. And, kind of got things up and going. And, we for the next season, which would have been a fall of 98 launch, we made this leather sketchbook. We made 100 of them that had these, little hand-painted sketches and swatches, and it just had a really great feel to it. And at that time, of course, there's no internet or social media at that point. So we're sending it to what we thought were kind of the influencers of the moment, which for us at that time would have been the buying teams at Barney's and Neiman's and, editors. And we had a great reaction to the book, the little sketchbook. People were calling us for appointments, and we went from those 2 accounts to 37 accounts the next that following season, and they were with some really terrific retailers, and that kind of got us up and going. I'd like to say I had some master plan, but I really didn't. I really it just we just we were fortunate that people liked the clothes, and it was successful, and that was really the start of it at that point.
So growing up in Louisiana, there's definitely more of a reality factor in people and the way you approach life. And did that influence the aesthetic and lifestyle of your brand?
I think subconsciously, all of those things, certainly for us. And I really, I definitely take a personal approach to the collection and to really everything we do. So that, and being from a small town in South Louisiana, that certainly, I have fond memories of that. It's certainly a long way from New York, and the aesthetic certainly at that time is very different. I think it keeps it somewhat grounded in some ways. Never forgetting where you come from some ways. And, when I started the William Reid collection, at that point I had lived in Los Angeles and New York and Boston, and, traveled a lot of places developing products. So definitely kind of having that viewpoint of the world and what, that consumer looks like, but also, really, knowing that there's places like Meet Louisiana out there, and how do people react to your things you make that are in those areas as well?
And you were really building some momentum with the brand. And in 2001, you won the CFDA award for Best New Menswear Designer. But that same year, your business also fell victim to the 9/11 attacks during New York Fashion Week. Can you share with the listeners what happened that week and what followed?
Sure. I mean, yeah, all of those things did happen kind of in a huge tsunami. I mean, really, of everything turning against us. From we had won the CFDA award in June of 2001, which really kind of helped us get some recognition and attention. So that next runway show was September 10th of 2001, and the build up to it, the invitation list, we had more important people coming to the show than we had in the past, more important buyers. And at that time too, runway shows were, also used to kind of sell your collection, or at least get it in front of the buyers. What typically would happen after then, think the world has changed, but back then, sort of the day after your show is when you start booking, all of your appointments to sell the collection. And so we hosted the show. We used to have this kind of pretty empty warehouse space in Chelsea. At that time there was nothing over there on 28th Street. Right. It's changed quite a bit. Yeah. Thus we could afford a warehouse space. But so yeah, we had this great show. The reaction was really strong, and I went back to the apartment, which was on Christopher Street, and right near the West Side Highway. So yeah, we went out, we celebrated, and the next morning I turned on the television, and see the planes going into the building. And at that point, I really didn't. You don't know, you don't know what's going on. First of all, then you're trying to think about what do you do? What's up with the rest of the day? This is obviously a big deal. At the time, you didn't realize it. And again, there's no social media. There's really not even, a robust internet type situation during that time. So I immediately went up to the office, and, we had 75 appointments scheduled for those, on top of each other, 2-3 deep on the appointments. We lost all of everything. Nobody showed up, obviously. Things just started to unravel at that point. And, at one point it's like, okay, guys, let's get out of here. This is not sounding good. I couldn't get a hold of my family. And I started walking back to the apartment and down the West Side Highway. And I saw this, the people just covered in the white dust. And I'm like, what is, I just couldn't place it all. It was just all so like out of a horror movie. I really think those days after it was just a state of shock. just a state of shock and not knowing what to do, or so many thoughts running through your head. And plus we had people, that worked with us in town as well that didn't live in New York, that were also trying to get out of New York. So there were some logistics kind of in play there. Of course, there was no way to rent a car. There was no way to get a taxi. So those next few days afterwards were kind of really just trying to figure out how to get out of New York and get to my family.
As a fashion entrepreneur who just saw the highs and
Mhm.
lows, the absolute highs and lows in a matter of 2 days, and just took center stage at the main event. That must have been obviously very defeating mentally. Was there any point over those few days afterwards where you just felt discouraged and just wanted to pack it in?
It was a little bit of process, trying to process everything. I was just really wanted to get to my family, my kids and my wife. It just kind of that's the only thing I could think about at the time.
Yeah.
But I obviously I couldn't help but think about, like, what are we going to do? Because also, kind of running concurrently with that, my investor had a company that was in the .com bubble bursting at the same time. So, just the perfect storm, because you're also, you're with the way the product cycle works, we're already positioning and forecasting for raw materials and, booking our factory time and all of those things. And all of that just completely unraveled, within 6 weeks to a couple of months. And then it was a huge scramble of just personal sustainability at that point.
So you moved down with your family back to Florence, Alabama, your wife's hometown and headquarters of your brand. And as America mourned in the wake of 9/11 terrorist attack, people turned to music, turned to food and destinations that offered this comfort and light. Was that what you found in returning to Florence?
After kind of the shock and, really trying to get ourselves just on our feet somewhat, it was sort of this moment where I did feel like if we were going to try to come back, it really should just be a completely different, way of doing it. So we went, one of the biggest changes was the collection was William Reid, which is my, full name. But no one's ever called me William. That moment was probably one of the big, so I said, whatever we do, I just want it to be real. I really want it to come from a true personal point of view, because if we're going to fail or if it's going to get taken away from us, let's do it the way we want to do it, versus with William Reid, we did not have any retail stores. We sold to, great retailers that did a wonderful job, but Barney's may buy the collection, but they buy maybe 10 to 12 styles. Or, if Beams bought it, they may get 8 things. And it's like, okay, well, it's kind of hard to tell your full story in that way. And you're also sort of making sure that what you're giving them something for them, not necessarily, for what it influences things somewhat. When we relaunched, we did come from that point of view, and we completely changed the business model and did not wholesale. We opened our own stores. And that gave us a chance to really, really tell a complete sort of brand story, because we had, the stores where people could come in, they could see it, feel it, smell it, hear it. And so all of those things you talked about people wanting to experience things, we were able to kind of do it in our own way. And if they liked it, then, we'd be successful. So we were very fortunate.
Yeah, you opened up the flagship store in Florence and a couple more in Texas. Can you describe, you're talking about being real, when you wanted to relaunch, you wanted to be real. Can you describe the vibe your brand was conveying at those Billy Reid boutiques in Florence and Texas?
Well, we definitely wanted to have this feeling of hospitality and inviting and warm. And that came somewhat from my mom had a really great clothing store in South Louisiana that was in my grandmother's old house. So it had a kitchen, it had, a living room and place, it was a place where people went to hang out. And even if they didn't come shop, they would come in and hang out. And I always loved that, what she created with that. And it was an inspiration for us. Said, I want it to feel like this. I want it to feel like someone's walking into our home. And so we set up the spaces to, have a residential feel to it, to the point that obviously we didn't have a ton of money. I mean, we were literally taking furniture out of our house and putting it in the stores, so it was definitely a lot of personal connectivity to it. But people it seemed to work. I mean, the store in Florence, when we opened that shop, at the time it was in an old house that was built in 1833. And so it had a kitchen, and it was a former antique store. So there were still some remnants of that in there. And we were able to kind of build this really, hospitality on steroids, where if you got them in the door, you had them, because they weren't going to get that vibe anywhere else. So that was sort of how we started, and really kind of, as corny as it sounds, I mean, really kind of built it one customer at a time from that point.
And when you relaunched the brand in 2004, it was at a time when the way men shopped and the way they care about how they look on a daily basis had been changing rapidly. This whole metrosexual movement, as it was called. Were you seeing that happening at the time? Were you seeing that happening at the time where men were making a more concerted effort to dress more stylishly and look more well-groomed?
Definitely could, feel that. You could definitely feel that happening. And, it was one of those things where you go, I think that people were they were getting more information. There were more outlets to get information of like how to dress, and there was more access. There were a lot more options available too, good options. So I think all of that there was a definite interest in menswear in general, starting to happen, and men caring about how they dressed. And we didn't really look at that as like, wow, we're going to leverage that. It was more of, we were just kind of a part of it. What was great that men were coming in, in many cases, like, I want to redo my entire wardrobe, and like, okay, pleated pants have been around forever, and I remember trying to convert my friends to plain front trousers. And if you ever got them to try it on where they could look at themselves in the mirror, they got it, versus wearing some, baggy pant all the time that just weighs you down. So if you could get them then and they liked it, well, hey, there's 3 pair of trousers, you're going to sell that customer right there. And same thing with shirting, it's more it kind of wardrobe building. And, our philosophy with that is that, yes, we're going to put the details in the fit and, use all the fabrics and the luxury components that are going to make it desirable and kind of our own piece. But it was also something where you may buy this now, but you're going to wear this 10 years from now, and trying to educate men on the importance of like having the right pieces.
And when did you add women's wear to your collection?
We started, at William Reid, it was, a big part of what we were doing with that. I mean, actually, the minute we introduced women's, which was in 2000 at William Reid, the next season it became 80% of the business. But that was also, women's is just such a bigger market. And we didn't have a store, we were wholesaling. So it was a completely different, business structure somewhat, and wholesale structure to it. But at Billy Reid, when we started in 2004 with just men's, and 2010, we started to dabble in some pieces, really taking the men's fabrics and doing it in a women's piece or a shirt dress. It kind of came from the men's, and we did not wholesale it. We just kept it in our shops, which gave us the opportunities to kind of make mistakes, which, always happen, as well as find out, kind of what's working. And we've really never had the full, staff to kind of work on those two things separately, so we almost have to work on them, as we're working on the men's, we're kind of working with the women's collection at the same time. It's still kind of that way. Certainly they've grown to have their own teams, but we still only have the women's collection in our own shops. We do not wholesale it.
So from a design standpoint, how do men's and women's fashion differ?
Whew. I think women, well, certainly the shopping pattern is probably one of the biggest things. Women are more apt to come in the store a few times a season, where a man only may come in once, so there is that frequency of constant newness that is required to keep that appetite and keep on their radar. That's a big part of it. Occasional dressing as well. I need a dress for this event, or I'm going to this party or wedding, where men want a jacket that they may wear it to that wedding, but it's more of I need this for a lot of different things. It's not really just one occasion. So I think that the way they shop is slightly different in what their specific needs are at the time, I think.
And how much of your business is women's wear now?
It's about 15% of our business.
So in 2010, you were named GQ's best new menswear designer and won the CFDA Vogue Fashion Fund Award. Your business was already up and running at that point. What was the impact of those two honors on your business?
It was a big shot in the arm. I mean, it just really helped us get exposure that we were not, an awareness that we weren't getting other than in the markets where we had our own shops. We had also at the time, right before then, in late 2008 had opened our first New York store. So the combination of being able to being in New York, which is, sort of the fashion media capital, and and then having the recognitions from those awards really kind of helped get our name out there quite a bit. And then from both of those awards, we got some really terrific collaborations. One being with Levi's, which was a huge help because they were able to work with someone that's got just a big mouthpiece and can help, again, bring more attention to what we're doing. And then with the Vogue Fashion Fund, we partnered with J. Crew on a collaboration. So all of that really helped just bring in a whole new community of people to work with, and then a mouthpiece that we had never, dreamed we would be able to have.
Who is the Billy Reid customer, and what does the brand evoke in them that makes them loyal and engaged to your brand? I was actually reading where you said that today's customer is more self-focused, not as interested in adhering to a guidebook of what to have in your wardrobe. Does that kind of describe who your customer is?
I think that's a fair description. They want to stand out without being like overly in a good way.
Right.
They want to stand out for great taste. And I think they also look for things that are going to live with them. It's not just, a trendy piece they're going to buy. I mean, they're going to buy this jacket and, they're going to wear it until they wear the damn thing out. I feel like that's their approach. And we try to provide those things that give them that point of difference, where it creates that subtle, sort of intangible. Yeah, I understand why this is different, even though if they can't put their finger on it, but they also know they're going to get something. They're going to use it. We used to say usable luxury, and I think that's been overcooked a little bit, but it is that kind of approach. We expect them to wear it, and get a ton of use out of it. And I feel like that's been something our customers have enjoyed. And I think they also just have, the hospitable part of that, the service that, we've established with our team, and that connectivity to it. If they're into that, we're a great landing spot for them, and a really, hopefully good companion for their fashion journey.
I was reading a fashion blogger actually said about your brand that Billy Reid, he makes you look good without looking like you worked at it too hard. Something guys are programmed to be afraid of. It's an effortless cool.
I like it. I mean, yeah, we just had a conversation about that and the word effortless and like, what the hell does that mean? I was like, oh, it's effortless. And they said, well, nothing is effortless. I said, well, it is. I don't think it's anything we did intentionally, it really wasn't. But I do feel like we build those pieces that can make someone feel like, give them the confidence that if you just do this, and this, or put these things together, you're going to look great. And that may not be what you normally think you'd put together, but put it together this way and then try it this way. Like what we've seen great success with is, let's say we have a charcoal and cream herringbone jacket, and it's an all year round jacket. And you go, okay, here's how I'd wear that to a cocktail party. Here's how I'd wear it out to dinner. Here's how I'd wear it to work, and you start to look at what those pieces look like and how they can put that together. And it's not Garanimals, but it is kind of hopefully getting to them to that point where the process of making yourself presentable is effortless, and you look cool, and it's something that's kind of been there with the collection since it started, but it's not anything we purposely went out to do. It just kind of happened. And maybe that's the effortless part of it. We'd have probably screwed it up if we'd have tried to do it. But whoever said that, I love that. We'll have to write that down and come back to it, because that is something that I love hearing that. I really like it.
So it seems that the series of setbacks that have come your way have also been most instrumental to your growth and success. Has the pandemic made you think differently about what you do, about what your brand even means in people's lives?
Yes, it's a great question. Yeah, I mean, certainly when, the pandemic really came upon us, man, the flashbacks were, insane for me personally, just thinking about 9/11, and what that effect to us and losing everything. In 2008, when we opened the New York shop, we literally flung the doors open the day the stock market crashed in 2008. So it's like, okay, right, how do we get through this? And in 2008, we were able to kind of negotiate some rent reductions, figure out our supply chain to, hey, we need to cut back here. We need to focus on these things. And I did look back to that time in 2008 because we had that feeling like, oh man, everything's about to fall apart again. But then we realized if we could actually hang on and show strength and like really dig into all the things that we're good at, with our store service and, really, bringing the right clothes to market and telling a great story, that if we could show strength in that time of where everything is down, we could come out in a really good spot. And we were fortunate that happened, then by 2010, man, all these great things started happening for us. I tried to get in that mindset when the pandemic happened. We had to really scramble. And, the first thing we did was really just cut we cut the collection in half. We stopped doing some categories that maybe weren't, producing as well as they could, or they were just small, and the logistics became really tough. So we just really kind of focused on the core things that we're doing. That really helped get us through the really rough times. COVID, certainly when the shops were closed for, some 6 to 9 months, and such a big part of our business. And it really helped us focus to digital and transfer so much of our focus to how we sell digitally, not only to the consumer, but also we had to figure out a way to, put together digital presentations for our wholesale accounts.
Right.
So we're cutting swatches, sending it to them, and then we're having Zoom calls and video conferences to help sell the collection to them because we weren't doing face-to-face appointments. So it really did help us integrate digital back into, or not back into, but into our processes and how we sell and communicate. It forced us to do that, but it also forced us to kind of focus on what's important and then really focus on the things that mean a lot to us, the items that mean a lot to us, and the categories that mean a lot to us, and how do we really look to build from a point of strength and versus just trying to be everything to everybody. And so there was a lot of focus on that, and really digging into focusing on the customer and what was working and what was not working.
Have you opened all your stores?
Yes, we have. I mean, like personally, like as a company.
Yeah.
Yes, we're involved in detail with every one of the shops of our own shops that we open.
How's the traffic been?
Traffic has, I mean, certainly been off, although the last few months, I will say that it's been much better. The numbers are returning to pre-COVID, not from a traffic standpoint, but from the volume standpoint, those numbers are returned. So it's been really good to see that. But yeah, no, the stores I feel like such a personal attachment to when someone's coming into our space that you just want that first impression, all the impressions to just be incredible. So we really take great pride. We got a great team that does that with us.
Yeah, your stores have a very residential feel to them. It's a space where you pretty much want to hang out for the day. And that's probably influenced, you were talking about before about your Southern roots and your family and hospitality. Does that same mindset also influence your philosophy for selecting the neighborhoods for your stores, ones that kind of easily endear itself to the community? Yeah,
man, it does. No, it doesn't mean that, some things you go, wow, that's just an incredible business opportunity. It has we'll figure it out, but the opportunity is wonderful. So we need to do that particular space. Right. But when we moved to, when we opened on Bond Street in New York, man, it was crickets over there. I mean, it's still not the most bustling area of New York City, but I mean, I just loved the space so much. It was the old Bowery Lane Theater.
Yep.
Fell in love with it, and it was completely, raw and needed so much work. But I could also look at the neighborhood and go, this is where I used to hang out, kind of some, and then the Bowery Hotel had opened. It's like, wow, something's going on here. This is gonna really take off. And it did in some ways, but it also was a way for us to go, we can be a part of this neighborhood, and we can be part of this community by doing this project. It would help the community if we did this project. That was our philosophy, and thank goodness it did work. We were able to kind of do that, and really kind of in, New York is neighborhoods, and that really made us gave us a local kind of, position there in New York and, the Bowery area. My wife and I had gathered the materials for 6 months. We put them on 2 trucks and we drove all the stuff to New York. We brought 2 carpenters with us from Alabama that had worked on my house. We unloaded all the wood in the space, and we did the whole thing the entire space was all done with reclaimed materials, no sheetrock period in the space. Wow. And it was we camped out there for 2 months, didn't go home. And to this day, one of my favorite things I've ever worked on. It was just really so much fun, and it meant so much to our business to have that space in New York, where we could, hold our appointments and and have a retail space.
So fashion, music, and food and art are really a big part of your brand and you personally. And ever since 2009, you host a 3-day event in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, widely known as Shindig. Can you talk about that event?
Sure. Well, yeah, it's here. We're based in Florence, or some people like call Muscle Shoals. And if you don't know about Muscle Shoals, it has this incredibly rich music legacy from the Rolling Stones to Bob Dylan, Aretha Franklin, to even modern day with the Black Keys and Alicia Keys. Great. I mean, all this incredible music that's been made here. And so when we opened the shop, we were here in Alabama. We really felt like, I was based in New York before. I'm like, man, if we can get some of these people to come down from New York and see what's going on here and learn about the music history and the culture, that we felt like that'd be a great story to tell. And it would help our community, and it would, help everything, So we did that. And so the first one, I think was 2008, we did that and brought folks down. And what we did is we made sure that the hospitality was off the charts with, great food. We had a friend of ours with a chef. We had, a couple of musicians that were friends of ours and some artists that were showing their art. And it was it was fantastic. And plus we had all the local friends of ours that were mixing with all these people from out of town. And so then we did it the next year, and we kind of upped the profile on some of the participants and some of the music acts. And we kind of added a couple of more chefs. And before you know it, this turned into sort of a mini festival that is, about food, music, art, and fashion. And it's grown now. We were on our 12th before COVID. It just slowly grown over time where, we've had 15 James Beard Award-winning chefs that have cooked during Shindig. We've had over 30, I think we're at 35 Grammys that have played, if you add them of the people that played in the Grammys they've won. And so and people have participated almost out of goodwill. It's not like we could afford to go out and do this. People just, they wanted to help and they wanted to be a part of it. And it just kind of blossomed. It's been so great for our community. It brought a lot of attention to our area and completely, sort of helped transform our downtown area a little bit. And it's just been wonderful to be a part of it. And and our whole company pours everything we've got into it, because it's definitely no one's full-time job. And to pull it off. And it's been great. Now this year we're still trying to figure it out. We've been on hiatus with it for 2 years, and the community is begging for it. Everyone is, we're wanting it too, but we're also trying to logistically figure out how to do it, when to do it. And then we feel like too, there's some things that we could evolve and maybe change and maybe kind of start smaller again, just after being out of it for a couple of years. It's like, let's just kind of ease our way back into it.
Did you fill in the gap for those 2 years with anything virtually?
We tried, but it was,
it's not the same thing. Yeah.
No, it's just not the same thing, especially because Shindig is so much about the people. Not only the people participating, but the people that attended, from all walks of life and from all over the country. And then you get all those folks and they mix with, our local community. And that just creates this unreal energy that's so much fun and so cool to watch. And so to try to take that and put it, on a digital screen, it just it would take a lot of cameras.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of production to do it. I think it could be done, but you need to be able to have that. It's all about the people. So much of it's about the people.
In the 2012 James Bond movie Skyfall, Daniel Craig as 007 shows up in a sharp, slim-fitting Billy Reid peacoat and became one of the most coveted collectibles for James Bond fans following the film's release. How did you catch lightning in a bottle? Was someone in the costume department discovered, or was Daniel Craig a fan of the brand?
Yeah, we did capture lightning in a bottle, and we probably tried to screw that up and didn't, thank God. No, Daniel Craig had bought the peacoat. This is before he was up for the movie, and he was a customer, and he loved the peacoat so much so that he bought 2 of them. And when he read the script for Skyfall, he noted, they kind of tag in the script like, you're going to be wearing this, they really, I guess they tie in like your wardrobe to the scene they're going to film. And they called for this peacoat, and he's like, well, I want this peacoat. And they, I think they had some things going on with Tom Ford and other people, but he stuck to that. So then they reached out to us and said, we would like this peacoat. We're going to shoot it for the Bond movie. We need 19 mediums and 11 larges. Of course, that was, we we were scrambling because I think we had 6. We're small. I mean, we're not, our whole production run was maybe 48 pieces on that thing, but it had been in the collection for years. I'd made that coat at William Reid. So it kept like, it had been around, and we were like, okay, well, we'll figure out how to make. So we figured out how to make them, got them the coats, having no idea what would happen. So lo and behold, it showed up in the movie, and it was in the scene for a long time.
Right.
And we started getting some calls, and we didn't even know. And we had this guy working with us that somehow got into these chat rooms. There's tons of these James Bond chat rooms. They talk about the book, and it just went off the charts, viral. And before you know it, we were getting lots of orders on that coat. And it took us 2.5 years to catch up to the back orders, because we kept making it, and then we'd have more back orders and more back orders. It was insane. And we love the peacoat.
And a lot of customers discovered your brand for the first time.
It's still sort of a gateway for some people. It's weird. It's still like the new Bond movie comes out, and we see, the peacoat like take off. We'll see the sales increase on it. It's to this day, it's still our number one selling outerwear piece every season by far. I mean, it doubles, triples anything else that we do from that item to any other outerwear piece every season to this day. I mean, we just keep it in stock.
You've done quite a bit of cool collaborations over the years, drawing from really a diverse roster of brands, from Levi's to K-Swiss to Coach to Stetson to Balvenie single malt Scotch whiskey to the folk rock band Mumford & Sons. What is your approach to collaborations?
I think for us, and again, personally, we look for connectivity. I think when we do a collaboration, you and partner with someone, you want that to be real. You don't want to have to make up some story of like, well, why are you working with that person? You want that to come from just a natural place, and having a connection to that brand or that person or whatever it might be. That's to us starting point one. I will say, we have done a couple where that connectivity wasn't as strong. You could see the result in the final success of the collaboration. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's all about like, it better be real, and where we can get out and honestly tell the story.
So for 2022, are there any partnerships or brand extensions or projects that we can expect that you could share with us?
Yes. And, with COVID and everything else, I mean, a lot of our plans had, gotten put on hold with partnerships and collaborations. And now we're sort of back into getting that stuff planned. I can't specifically mention these things because there's still some contract stuff happening, But I will say that we are partnering with a really incredible music brand coming up for this coming into 2022. We're also partnering with a really awesome home and decor brand, which we're very, very excited about. And also with a really great heritage athletic brand that is that I have some great connectivity to, that we're real excited about as well. So definitely see these extensions, certainly with the way the stores are, with kind of the residential vibe of the shop. We really see sort of the home and the decor as a really natural area for us to evolve, certainly in collaboration.
A lifestyle, yeah.
Yeah. So we see those things, and and more of those to come. And we're real excited about the partner that we're working with, because we see that as sort of something that can be longer. We try to look at it too. We're certainly on the brand collaborations. I think for us, we've learned that when they can have longevity in the relationship, not just a one and done, that it feels better. And I think you go into it with a different intention. I think looking at those relationships long term really are the betterment for the end result of the product.
So Billy, my final question is the luxury item question, which I ask all my guests. So if you were stranded on a deserted island and you can only have one luxury item with you, what would that luxury item be? It can't be any form of air transportation or water transportation or anything that requires mobile service so you can call someone to get you off that island. It's just you, lots of sand, lots of palm trees, and lots of ocean. What would that one single luxury item you would like to have with you?
Well, I gotta say, I knew this question was coming. I had to think about it, and I certainly thought about like, okay, you look at it from a practicality standpoint, right? It's like, well, what's practical? Should I bring a stove? It's like, well, no, that wouldn't work because there's no electricity or gas. So I had the practical item, which I thought about my lodge, well-seasoned Dutch oven, which is seasoned with all kinds of great Cajun food that's been cooked in it through the years. That would be great to have on the island because practically you would have it and have something to cook in. That was my one thing. And then I thought about comfort and sentimentality. And I thought about my grandmother's quilt because I love it in the summertime and I love it in the wintertime. And then I was like, okay, but the luxury item, I have this Epernus old recliner that I spend a lot of time in. I'm sitting there right now working it. I do everything else. Like, well, I think the comfort part of that would be pretty cool to have. You could sleep in it. You could take, it would be there for you.
Is that your final answer, Billy?
I think that might be, I want three things, I want something to cook in. I want some sentimentality and comfort, and I want to be able to relax.
Okay. You're the first guest of mine who gets snuck in three things in one. You got to pass.
I was still struggling, but even before the call, I didn't know which one to do. So,
fashion designer Billy Reid, thank you so much for joining me on the luxury item.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun. Great conversation.
That's it for this episode of the Luxury Item Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this useful and entertaining, I would be really grateful if you can share it with a friend or colleague. I would love it if you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other listeners find us. The Luxury Item Podcast is a production of Silvertone Consulting. I'm your host, Scott Kerr. Until next time.